Man, what a pleasure to be here with you guys today, thinking about this idea of compassion and what it means for burnout. I was on a phone call a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to an executive that had called and said, hey, we need you in California on Tuesday. And it was Friday afternoon. And she was like, you have to get here. And I was like, oh, okay, well, what do you want to talk about? I don't know, but we need help. Cool, okay, well, sounds great. Sounds like an adventure, that'll be fun. And so we started to go through some topics. This person is a highly placed executive at a technology company out in Silicon Valley. And we started to talk about how lonely leadership can be and how exhausted she felt and how disconnected she was in the moment. And I watched as this executive began to kind of break down a little bit. I mean, someone that people are looking to in the moment. And then I began to see the thread as I talked to other leaders and other team members, but also people in my own community, my next door neighbors, the people that live right next door to me, the people that I go to church with, the people that I'm in band with, the people that I work with here at the University of Louisville, and this idea of extending ourselves over and over and over again as a badge of honor in some way is becoming a distracted exhaustion in many, many ways. This idea of compassion is something that we've talked a lot about over the last couple of years. And I want to share a quote with you from a project that we worked on here with the Center for Positive Leadership. We were really trying to understand, where does compassion come from? Because everybody wants more of it, to extend it, to have it. I mean, I would really love it if my wife was maybe a little more compassionate with me at home. Don't tell her I said that if someone in here knows her, so let's just keep that between us. I would love it if my coworkers extended some compassion to me, and we talked a lot about the idea of compassionate leadership throughout the pandemic. Compassion was a word that was very popular. And the idea was, well, we can just flip it on like a switch. So we set out to understand, where does it come from? What is the source of compassion? And so we interviewed 50 of the world's top leaders, people who general manage professional sports teams, and they work in places like NBC, and they run universities across the world. And some of those people are local here to Louisville, and others are in far distant countries. And one of the participants said this, when we asked her if there was one kind of parting thought about compassion. She says, we will not go back to a normal. That normal will not be acceptable. Now don't miss that. There's hope in that. That normal will not be acceptable, because this is our chance to forge a new normal. This is our opportunity. This is our moment. This is our call to action. I think it's a chance for everyone to press the reset button if we'll stop long enough to think about what's worth keeping, stopping, and starting. But will we do that? Will we do that? I think it's going to probably be the rare leader that can hold that space. And I love that call that she gives to us today, and I think that's the purpose for us being in the room. That's that call that it could be different, and what would it look like? I love to lead with this question today: what if? What if? What if we get it right? How would it change? How would it change the way you work? How would it change the way you communicate? How would it change the way that you go home at night? What if? What if? When we think about compassion, I think it's important for us to level set what it is. And then I want to dig into the tool. The tool, we're going to actually go through some of the exercises in the tool. But before we get there, I want to make sure that we're level set on what this idea of compassion is. When you think about the word compassion, what words or stories come to mind for you? What are the things that you think about? For me, I think about things like, Daniel mentioned them earlier. Love, joy, hope. I think about watching people extend compassion. One of the most important things about being compassionate is that we have other people in our lives who role model that compassion is possible. If we don't have somebody in our life where we've seen someone extend compassion to someone else, we do not know that it is a choice. Instead, it's distraction, detachment, perhaps dishonesty. I've heard leaders say, I work with a sense of humiliation, like that's in my toolbox. No. No, above the line, dignity. Dignity is where we want to work from. So when you think about the idea of what compassion is, as we work through these tools together today, I hope that you'll take stories with you because they are incredibly powerful. Now, as we level set what we mean by compassion, academically, compassion has 3 components to it. Wonderful and beautiful researcher Jane Dutton pioneered much of the work that is grounded in the area of compassion. And that work was inspired by a man with the last name of Frost who helped her kind of understand. But Jane really kind of pulled the story of compassion forward. The first is noticing. So to be compassionate, we have to notice. Now, to notice requires a couple of things. First, we have to be aware and outward focused. So there's a shift there. There's an inside-out shift that has to happen. We're aware of what's going on around us, and I'm outwardly focused. Now, this sounds really easy. It sounds super easy. It's pedestrian, even. But it's really hard to execute. It's really even more difficult to execute when you don't have the resources to be present in the world around you because you've given all you can. This is about a place of capacity. Do you even have the capacity to notice? I was walking in a room the other day and I must have had my blinders on because I bumped right into someone and they were literally right in front of me. And I didn't see them. And I'm like, how did I not see this person? And I was so focused on what I was doing. And my daughter at the Louisville FC game this past Saturday was walking around with her phone up in her face, right? And she's bumping into people. I'm like, Maddie, you're not noticing what's around you. You're distracted. You're distracted. This isn't only about what's happening in the moment, but it's about what could be. It goes back to the root of that question of what if? What if? So to be present requires us to have resources. Now, the second component of compassion is the idea of empathy. Empathy is about being in the meeting, being in the conversation, being in the virtual chat, being on a remote meeting, and seeing someone for who they are. There's no judgment. There's common ground here. There's not a sense of like, I see you and I'm judging you, or I see you. No, I see you and I hear you. I notice you. I have empathy for you in the moment. This is not about being soft. This is very much about being authentically human. Now, don't miss that. We're noticing things here, and then we're getting into this space of, I see you and I hear you. The third piece of compassion is perhaps the most distinguishable component. It's a requirement. Up until this space right here, it's a good feeling. Oh, I see you, Brad. I feel really sorry for you. I am so sorry that you are walking in the rain. It must be really wet outside. Yep, your clothes are getting drenched. But you don't take any action. Up until this place, it's just nice. Here is where we get kind, where there's an action step associated with it. So I not only notice that I might be walking in the rain, And I feel terrible that Trish is walking by herself in the rain. I happen to have an umbrella, and so I go share that umbrella with her, right? That's the action step associated with it. As a leader, we need the capacity to do that. We have to be present in the moment. We have to have empathy in the situation. And most importantly, there's a bias to action. Don't miss that, a bias to action. I'm going to step into the arena with you. I'll often use the phrase, I'm going to get in the boat with you and row. I'm not going to give you directions. I'm getting in with you. Let's do this together. My wife, as a kindergarten teacher, had a saying that she would tell her classroom all the time. Guys, we can do hard things together. And they would go, yeah, Miss Shuck, we can. We can do hard things together. So when I notice and I have empathy for the person or the situation or the community or the need, and then I take action, that is compassion. That's what it looks like in action. But here's, I think, the challenge that we face. The ability to do those things, to see, to have empathy, to take action, comes from resources. It comes from resources that we have available in the moment. I may want to extend compassion, but I physically and emotionally cannot because I am depleted. I am tired. I am exhausted. I am disconnected. I am distracted. I'm in a different place. You know, I think about resources here around time. Do you have time? Maybe for some of us, the ability to extend compassion is around financial resources. Do I have $3 or $4 extra to extend to the person behind me in the Starbucks line or the McDonald's line to pay it forward for them? And if I don't, maybe I can't do that. Maybe it's about the emotional reservoir that I've got. Maybe it's about feeling burned out myself. But this, make no mistake, burnout is a mismatch between resource and demand. It's a simple equation, to be honest with you. There's only one way to solve for burnout. You either decrease the demand or you increase the resource. But we can't have it both ways. And so if compassion is a way to build this reservoir, then we need the resource to do that. When we have those resources, we have access to those resources. I think about words like abundant, enough, authentic, present, empathetic, integrity. Those words that seem so easy to do, but sometimes in the moment can pull from our resources. But when we have access to time and energy, when we're well ourselves, Daniel talked a lot about the physical toll that stress can take. That's true. When we're well ourselves, it changes everything. And here's what's so amazing about extending that umbrella in the rain. It's never expected, but it transforms everything in the moment. See, we don't extend our umbrella to the rain because someone earned it. Trish isn't coming to me because I've earned her umbrella. She sees me. She has empathy for me. And she takes action. And it transforms. In those moments, compassion changes everything. Because no one ever expects it. And that's why having someone in our life who role models that for us can be such a game changer. And I want to encourage you, you may very well be that person for the people you work with. They're looking at you saying, look at him, look at her. We need those moments. When our resources dwindle, we can feel burned out and empty. And this is the challenge, right? When we do not have enough ourselves, we can feel empty, sitting in our silence. Rather than extending compassion in a transformational way, we extend our resources in a transactional way. This feels forced. and blank and bear. Have you ever done that? I mean, I know I have. I certainly have. I can think of countless incidents where I have gotten this wrong. I didn't do this well. I didn't even do this well at home for my family, let alone the people that I work with. And you know what I've said a lot? I'm sorry. And I've made the next best decision. When we extend ourselves, when we do not have the resources to give, this feels forced, blank, and bare. And there is a cost. There's a cost to that. Sometimes that cost is sleep. Oh, man, I agreed to do this. I'm going to have to stay up late tonight and get this done. Oh, man, sometimes it's our health. Oh, man, I can feel the physical manifestation of pain in my body from the stress that I'm feeling. Sometimes it's our families. Sometimes it's our communities. Sometimes it's our work. Sometimes it's a bad email. But when we extend, when we do not have, there's a cost to that. That's what transaction looks like. So part of abundance, here's where we get to the fun stuff. This is what I love. Part of abundance is found in slowing down. Part of abundance is found in reflection. It's found in awareness. It's found in boundaries, which I'm terrible at. It's found in naming it. It's found in de-escalating. It's found in the power of your stories. It's found in those moments. It's why we recommend so often for people to start their day with a mindful activity, a journal. Write 3 grateful words that you have down. Don't overthink it. And they might be coffee, 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 and that's fine. You're grateful. It's perfectly fine. But what owns our mind and owns our heart owns our day. And so what we want to do here is to slow down. And this is where we really want to focus some of our time, the remaining time that we've got to think about this idea of compassion. Now, we're gonna do some activities. Is that okay with everyone? Yeah? Okay. I want to kind of get into this with you. The tool, if you look in your packet, is Compassion and Burnout Reflection Guide for Self and Team. Wonderfully designed by the Center for Positive Leadership, I might add. And this is meant to be a guide. This is meant to be a set of reflective questions that you can use either on your own. Maybe you want to work through these questions individually. Maybe you want to work through these questions with a team. You have a defined team at work. You have a defined team at your organization. Maybe you're doing an off-site retreat. You want to spend some time thinking about this idea of compassion and burnout. I would note on page 4, there are some instructions. There's an overview, much of which I've covered already through the deck this morning. And then there are some instructions. But there is a teaching and facilitation note on page 4 that I would want to draw your attention to. If we take our time and we find ourselves in a state of reflection and awareness and slowing down and being present in the moment, the guide could take up to an hour. I don't think that's outside the boundaries. And here's the reason why. These questions may require us to just sit with them for a minute. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I'm going to sit with it for a minute. And I want you to know that's okay. I'm going to invite you to sit with that question, to sit in silence. It's going to require courage to step in. For some of us, we're going to feel the burden kind of release. We're going to be, where it's appropriate, vulnerable. We're going to honor that space and acknowledge the growth, knowing that each person may answer these questions very differently, and that's perfectly acceptable. It's designed to be that way. It will ebb and flow as we need. On page 5 is where I want to start. And we've broken this up into a 4-box model. And this was my attempt at creating a 4-box model. I apologize for my graphic design skills. But we really wanted to look at compassion and burnout in 4 different areas. Internal and then external. That there are these internal sources of resource that we've got, and there are these external sources of resource that we have. Internal are things like what I have here, like where are the resources, where am I drawing these things from? Where's burnout living in the space? The second is the self. Down here, external is work, and then family. And we broadly define the term family. We know that some people live in traditional types of families, and other people live in alternative families where they've got communities of loved ones, circle of friends, trusted colleagues that they love on. However you define that for you is perfectly fine. But I want to start on page 5. And we're going to just take a general step forward around, all right, what is this idea of compassion? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you probably about 5 minutes, just 5 minutes to think through these questions individually, okay? And I want you to write down as much detail as you can as you read through these questions. Things like, when you think about the word compassion, what does it mean to you? Feeling burned out, exhausted, and depleted is a common experience. And then the last one here, can compassion and burnout live in the same space? And then I'm going to invite you to talk about this at your table briefly. And then we'll walk through the rest of the guide, and I'll show you kind of how that works. But for a minute, I want to practice this sense of abundance and self-reflection here today. So take a few minutes, walk through the 3 questions on page 5, and then in 4 or 5 minutes, we'll come back together and I'll ask you and invite you to share at your tables. Okay? Awesome. So I don't want to rush us. I don't want to rush us. But I do want to make sure that you have some time to share at your tables, just a little bit. So I want to invite you to just maybe take the first question and kind of round robin it. You know, talk about what that is, and then maybe if we've got time, we'll move to the second question. But completely unstructured, I won't facilitate this. I want to empower you at your tables to kind of begin to walk through these questions where it feels, how and when it feels right for you. So take a few minutes, begin to tell your stories. I'll pull us back together. I'll walk us through the guide, and then I'll turn it over to Daniel to introduce our second speaker today. All right, I hate to pull us out of these amazing conversations that I know are happening at your table. I know. But I don't want you to miss what happened when we turned it over and you just got to tell your story and you got to talk through the power of the learning that was happening in here. Like, did you feel the energy level even just bump a little bit, right? And that's how we create abundance and resource, and that's how we create and access compassion. So if you're using this on a team, think about the kinds of discussions that you might be having. If it's a large team, you can break it up like this. You can send it as pre-work if you wanted to do that. These tools are completely free. If we were to walk through the rest of the book here, as you turn into page 6 and 7, we talk about resources. On a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 being no resources, 5 being full of resources, what's your current level of ability to be compassionate? Questions like, what, if any, place in your life do you want or need to increase your resources for compassion? And if you got it right, what would change? And leaning into naming that has a lot of power, especially as you write it down. When we think about the self, what burdens, if any, are you carrying that are weighing you down, that are keeping you from being more self-compassionate? Where in your life do you need to give yourself permission to be more compassionate with yourself? Look, this is an area that I struggle in. My wife will tell you I will just push through it. But where are there areas in my life or your life where we can extend self-compassion to ourselves? On pages 8 and 9 is work and family. I love this question about work. Name 2 strengths you're most proud of bringing to your work environment. I think if I was to ask you to list all the things that you're not really good at, you could probably give me a pretty long laundry list of those things. But when I ask you to think about your strengths and your gifts, it changes the conversation. Because each of you brings something uniquely special to your work environment. As we think about family, Are there habits in your life that are holding you back from being more compassionate? Over the last few weeks, can you think of a specific time where you can practice compassion with someone in your circle? How did it feel? Name that. And then the final page is just some wrap-up questions around making meaning. Look, I have been absolutely honored to share this tool with you. I hope you will find it useful. I hope that you'll leave today, after hearing all of our speakers, inspired and clinging to the question, what if?